right. Good afternoon, everyone. Happy February. Happy Friday. We are so thankful and grateful that you are spending a little part of your afternoon in our fourth session of our webinar series, AI with the Friday Institute, from Insight to Innovation in Higher Education. If you've not had a chance to participate or attend or view the recordings of our previous sessions, we'll have those posted there on our website for you to engage with. Our goal is also to move these to our place, our professional learning and collaborative environment, where our materials will be hosted there as part of a course that folks can work through and earn a certificate as well. And so we'll be sharing more details out about that in the weeks to come as we get our recordings from these webinars put together and into our place Moodle instance. I'm Emma Broughton, and I am pleased to be here with Laura Fogel, our Director of Metric here at NC State. I am part of the Friday Institute, which is part of the College of Education, and our goal really is to think about that research, policy, and practice piece. And so we regularly are bringing folks together to conduct that research and to look at that to help us understand, well, how does that inform policy, or how does that inform practice? What does that look like? But then also, when we think about the policy or practice, how does that help inform our research and the other pieces? We see those as very symbiotic and important to each other. We work primarily in K-12. We definitely work in North Carolina, but also beyond that in the workforce and in other parts of our country too. As I mentioned, I'm Emma Broughton. I'm the Director of Digital Learning here at the Friday Institute. Laura Fogel has been an amazing partner and collaborator on this. She's going to be leading quite a few of our examples that we will bring you today as part of our session here of leading the way and championing AI as higher ed and faculty. Our goal really programmatically is to think about, how do we empower educators? How do we offer those hands-on guidance and experiences to foster and grow AI literacy, where people are really understanding, evaluating, and then using the AI? And then what does that mean to transform teaching and learning? And as I mentioned, this is our fourth series in our four-part webinar learning experience. We started out thinking, how do you step into AI? Then how do you navigate that maze and really consider and evaluate those tools so that you can embrace the now and consider, how can students be using this? How do I use this? What does it look like in my professional practice? And here we are with leading the way, thinking about, how do I champion and advocate for good, responsible, safe, ethical AI implementation? And so as we get started here in this session, our objectives really are to think about, how can I learn from these examples from my colleagues in higher ed? What does that look like? And what does that mean for me in my practice? How do I advocate for AI as a digital learning leader? And I think all of us, in lots of ways, whether we're at the beginning stages or we're further along, can serve as a digital learning leader and model for others, whether it be how we ask really critical, important questions, or how we might be implementing and modeling for others. And then, where do I go with my journey to AI literacy? I will say, I am not an AI expert. I know what good teaching and learning looks like. I know what it looks like to integrate technology in meaningful, important ways for students and their learning. And so that's really been, to me, an important way to begin my AI literacy journey in the last couple of years, as it has become more accessible and approachable. I really am thinking always about that learning process and the adoption process for things like AI. I believe in our first webinar, we touched on this briefly, this research from the 60s about how we adopt our new things, new consumerism in the world, how I might want to think about purchasing something. This really applies, I think, for us a lot of times in the way that we think about learning a new skill or implementing a new technology tool in our practice. We start with that awareness and interest piece. So we are building and developing that background knowledge, those experiences. We move into evaluation and trial, where we're really thinking about, is this the right thing for me? Am I going to do this in different ways than what I traditionally or previously have done? And then how do I move into that adoption piece? That research actually stops with adoption, where I've really pushed this into motion and I have either accepted it or I've rejected it. And that state of adoption in our research stops there. I'm going to argue as a researcher, there's a sixth stage where I think about how do I advocate? How do I lead with this? How do I tell other people about that? And of course, this is cyclical and iterative. And so we might go back and we build more awareness or interest, or we may reevaluate or retry before we get to a state of adoption. But as I am doing this in my own practice, I'm thinking about these stages. As I'm working with other learners, I'm also thinking about these stages. So they might be asking these types of questions. What is this? Or why is this important? Can I do this? How do I do this better? And how do I know I did this? And then finally, we hope we get to folks who are going to do some of that peer to peer learning and support and modeling for each other, where they're thinking, how can I lead with this? How is this making a difference? And how can I do more and share this work? And so we're really elevating and hoping to celebrate those folks who are advocating in their way, in their practice during our session today. I do want to revisit a couple of things from our previous sessions as well, where we looked at the blueprint for an AI Bill of Rights. I mentioned those safe, responsible, ethical implementations before of AI. Before I even get to the use part of it, of an AI tool, I'm thinking about, is this a safe, effective system? Is there algorithmic discrimination protections built into that platform? Are there data privacy pieces that I really need to investigate and understand those terms of use? Is this AI? Do I know this is AI? I should know when AI is being used and how it affects them. And then are there other alternatives to that? And I noticed, Laura, that you dropped in the link to the White House Bill of Rights. We shared that in a previous session. What's interesting, I think, about that is we probably are getting a 404 access to that White House link because the executive orders around AI are changing. But I think it's really important for us to think about, how are these protections still really important for us as an education institution? And so I'm still relying on these 5 pillars to think about what this looks like as I'm navigating that maze. And so we have tried to make that more accessible for folks here at the Friday Institute and a lot of our professional development and work as we think about navigating the maze, the MAZE. So if we progress to that next slide, we'll deconstruct that just a little bit. How do I monitor my data privacy requirements for that type of tool that might happen, I might be using in my classroom? How do I assess for accuracy and think about, is the output of that AI really good quality? Is it accurate? And then zeroing in on that bias. Why is it biased? Where is it biased? What do I do when it is biased? And then how do I evaluate that value? How do I really think about, is this useful for me? If I've moved through the M and the A and the Z part of that evaluating AI acronym, can I get to a place where I can really think about the transformational power of what this platform or tool might do for me? I'm thinking that right now, a lot of the AI tools are telling us they can bring more efficiency to our lives because of that automation. So if we go to the next slide, you may remember this graphic from our previous webinar, where I believe that we are really at the tip of the iceberg thinking about efficiencies with AI. And I really want to encourage folks to rethink those transformational opportunities that will exist for us as we really are moving forward with AI in our classrooms and in our professional practice. I'll again remind you from a previous webinar that we looked at the digital promise framework for the types of AI use. And I think really meaningful to that is the interactions that we have with AI. A lot of times that can be a very personal experience, as you might work with a chatbot, or as you might have your large language model interactions, that you are having that one-on-one interaction with AI as it's adjusting and adapting to the experiences that it offers for you, or because of the data that's collected. But I'd love to encourage folks to really think about the next 2 types of uses for AI, being creating with AI. And that's really that more dynamic piece that's exciting and moving beyond just those efficiencies, where I'm translating or synthesizing or even progressing further into that problem solving with AI. I am cautious about what AI implementation looks like, but I am really excited about the possibilities that are really within arm's reach, I believe, when it comes to the capacity that AI is growing for us in our use. I want to spend most of our time this afternoon really looking at these examples. So I'm going to turn this over to Laura to begin to share with us some of these examples that we've collected from our faculty and staff for what this looks like for them, either interacting, creating, or problem solving with AI. Laura?
Yeah, thanks, Emma. Thanks for setting the stage for that. One of the things I love the iceberg analogy. And when I initially thought about the iceberg analogy, right, the ways um, that the transformation is the part that's underneath the water and that's not we haven't maybe gotten quite there. Um, and thought about these three different ways that we use AI, I initially was thinking, well, interacting is not as transformational as problem solving, but some of the examples that our colleagues have shared sort of flip that on its head for me. That there are some ways of interacting with AI that really can also be transformational. So I'm excited to share those today and really grateful for all of the colleagues who are willing to share their work with us. And I know we'll get to hers in just a few minutes, but one of those colleagues is with us, Dr. Huang. And so pardon me. Uh, really grateful to be able to share the work of many people. We have 6 different examples, and they span from staff to teaching faculty and also research faculty. So our first one from Tyler Kroon. Tyler is a research librarian for the College of Engineering at NC State, and he primarily supports faculty and students in engineering, but he's also presented widely on the applications of large language models in higher education. I was fortunate to be able to attend one of his workshops, which was amazing. And he talked about this example that he's shared with us for today about Research Rabbit. So Research Rabbit is an AI-powered literature mapping tool that helps you discover scholarly papers and visualize the connections between them. So the user creates or uploads a collection of papers, and you might use a tool like Zotero. I'm definitely team Zotero. If you want to learn more about Zotero, Emma put the link to Zotero also. It's a great way to collect resources. So Research Rabbit examines the collection that you have provided it, and then makes recommendations of semantically similar papers that you might be interested in based on the ones that you initially shared. So, and the similar papers are represented in a visual network that shows how the publications connect to each other and provides links to the additional publications so that you can access those and integrate them into your research if they're relevant. The tool is free. You do have to create an account. And because it uses your initial research as sort of the seed, um, it's most useful if you've already done some research and have a few relevant sources that you're really happy with, to provide to it to get additional resources. Also, because of the integration that it has with Zotero, it's particularly helpful for people who are using Zotero. Um, and so I think that this, right, is a tool that could really be transformational for people who are doing literature reviews in particular. So it's a great example from Tyler.
One of the things that I think is really interesting with what you're describing is what we are finding more and more in the research and the studies that are coming out, that people who are really effectively using AI tools already have some type of a domain knowledge. And so it is in tandem with the AI that they are working, and their output and the results that they take away from that AI interaction is far more meaningful and developed because of that domain knowledge. And I think I hear that represented in how you're describing this interaction with the tool Research Rabbit, where you bring some of that domain knowledge you're interested in and maybe further refine it with that AI tool. And I think that's a really interesting piece here.
And I think, Emma, to piggyback on that, thinking about how we advocate with AI or for AI or about AI, um, thinking about your domain and where it is that you have strength of knowledge, understanding, and connections with people, that's the point that you advocate from. Is it's we don't all have to be technologists, right? So advocate in the domain that you're within. So our next example is from Dr. Christy Bird, and she's an associate professor in teacher education and learning sciences. And her examples are, she has several examples that she was willing to share with us. And she is using generative AI for creation in most cases here. So she shared that she uses generative AI nearly every day for small and big tasks in her personal life, creating characters for role-playing games, sounds like fun, volunteer work, writing Google App scripts, and also at work. So the examples that I'm going to illustrate here that she shared with us are really within her work, within academia. So in this example, she asked ChatGPT to write a template for a letter international students could use when they're traveling to show that they're enrolled in the program. So previous to ChatGPT, she said she would have Googled something like this and found an example to model her letter after. But using the LLM, she just generates it directly or generates a draft directly through the chatbot or through the large language model. So in this example, is closer to the teaching side. She needed help writing a comprehensive exam question that would be clear to her students. So she told ChatGPT that what she wanted the question to be about, gave it a sample of the student's description of their interests, and noted where she had previously been concerned. So the task required some back and forth to get closer to what she wanted, and she edited the final question to address what she really wanted it to address. And I think this gets to a proficiency with large language models that we've mentioned previously, that more experienced users use uh, the LLM in an iterative process, right? It's not you give it a prompt, it gives you something back and you walk away, but there's this iterative process. In this one, she really, this might be more of an example of problem solving, because in this example, she used ChatGPT to reword some of her own writing for a grant proposal. And she shared some tips with us on the way she did that. She would ask ChatGPT to finish a sentence or give it some of her writing and say, make this clearer. So you can see here some examples of how that worked, right? She gave it notes that she made about her methodology and asked it to make them into a couple of paragraphs. So using ChatGPT as a writing partner and for specific pieces of the writing, as opposed to, I think some at least of my initial uses of large language models, right? Like I just was like, write me this thing. So the idea of using it to revise or adapt writing instead of asking it to generate a draft is another interesting approach. Um, Another one here is uh, getting ChatGPT to generate low stakes activities for classroom work. This is an example of writing a proposal for a research symposium. The symposium was small, and she felt like that asking ChatGPT to start her proposal saved her about half an hour of writing time. So again, she didn't take it as the whole proposal, but used it as a writing partner. So here's a example of problem solving where Dr. Bird was working on a camp design, and she had thought about three different options for the camp: a 3-day, 5-day, and a 6-day that included a day of the weekend. She created a matrix of the choices and her priorities and ranked them. Um, and then she asked ChatGPT to analyze her matrix. So she had done the initial creation, and it was helping her with the problem solving of which is the best option here. And instead of asking it to create content, it was analyzing content that she created. So that's a slightly different twist on that approach.
Yeah, I love that you are describing that one here because I think sometimes we don't realize we can ask ChatGPT for feedback or our large language model for feedback. So it will do a really interesting assessment and it will explain against whatever rubric or criteria that you might be asking of it. So you can have that really interesting dialogue and back and forth for improvement that lends itself to that co-development. There's also been something recently published from our copyright offices in DC that I think is really interesting here because sometimes we are wondering who actually owns that output of that product that's been developed as you have prompted the large language model to provide writing or something for you. And actually, the copyright offices are saying that the person who the user does. And so, while it's important to continue to cite and give reference to and acknowledge that interaction with AI for that transparency and disclosure, I think it's really interesting that we're seeing from kind of that legal perspective from the copyright offices that they are coming up with a definition to that as well. The other thing I put in the chat here are two things for this example. The first being the link to what Dr. Bird shared with you from the summary evaluation of that camp. I love the feature that you're able to share with others what that conversation with the AI, the LLM has been. But I also wanted to remind folks of the guide that we shared, I think in webinar 2, that provides you with a variety of prompt tools or prompts that you can use to get something different from what you might traditionally use for your interaction and problem solving with AI. So feel free to add that to your Google Drive or to use any of those prompts and play around and think expansively about what you're able to do as you interact and you use the large language model some more. I do want to flag that our next example from Dr. Sarah Egan Warren, she is here with us this afternoon. So I know that we have a recording, but I also am going to put her on the spot and ask her to unmute. We'll play that, but then if there are other contributions she'd like to make as well, would love to invite her to do that. So Laura, you first, and then I will have Dr. Warren unmute.
Yeah, thank you, Emma. We're so delighted to have you here. Um, Dr. Egan Warren. So I'll introduce you and play your recording, as Emma said. So Dr. Sarah Egan Warren specializes in ethical data storytelling. She's a teaching assistant professor at the Institute for Advanced Analytics at NC State and the lead facilitator of the UNC Systems faculty learning community on generative AI in teaching and learning, which was formed in the fall of 2024. And we can share a link to that learning community with you as well. There's great conversations happening in that space. So here is the recording. Make sure that this is.
Hi, I'm Dr. Sarah Warren, and I used Poe to build a simple bot to help students create their own SWOT analysis of their communication skills. Poe is free. They do offer a subscription, but I have just used the free version here. I created the bot that I named SWOT Helper to support students while they create their own SWOT analysis. I prompted the SWOT Helper bot to be supportive but not write the SWOT analysis for the student. Instead, I instructed the bot to ask leading questions about the 4 categories. I provided an article about SWOT analysis and my own assignment sheet and class notes about SWOT. I instructed the SWOT helper bot to only pull information from these knowledge sources. The purpose of the SWOT helper bot is to help students who are stuck or are unsure of their own strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. The SWOT helper can offer assistance with brainstorming so that the student can critically think about their own experiences. I've been testing the SWOT helper with some users, and the response has been positive. You can try it out, and if you do, please let me know about your experience. I will be rolling it out to all students later this spring and will gather feedback about whether my SWOT helper lives up to the name and actually helps students do a better job on this exercise. Well, thank you so much for having me. I wasn't sure I was going to make it today, and so I appreciated the opportunity to make the recording. And I will also just thank you for giving a plug for our faculty learning community. Any librarian, faculty member, instructional technologist, instructional designer who is interested in AI, we welcome you in our faculty learning community. We share lots of activities, webinars, free events, workshops, drop-in sessions so that we can keep connected across the whole UNC system and be talking about with our colleagues what we're doing, what's been successful with AI, and maybe some of the challenges and roadblocks that we've run into. It's a really supportive community. And if you are looking for some good conversations and making connections at different institutions, please join us. There is a very short survey at the link on the bottom of that page. And once you do that, you're in and we'll get you connected. Thank you so much for giving me an opportunity to talk about this.
Oh, thanks so much for being here with us and for sharing your work. It's great advocacy for all of us to learn from. Thank you. All right, next up, also with us, I believe, is Dr. Joey Hong, who's an assistant professor of learning design and technology in the Teacher Education and Learning Sciences Department of the College of Education and a member of the Digital Transformation of Education cluster. And she is has shared with us an exciting project that she is working on, an AI-powered creative computing platform. So I'll play your recording, Dr. Huang, and then feel free to unmute and add anything else that you would like to add.
Hi everyone, I'm Joey Huang. I'm assistant professor at NC State University, where I research creative computing, AI, and participatory design in education. Today, I'm excited to share our Algo, an AI-powered platform designed to bring creative computing to youth, especially in rural and underrepresented communities. So, why creative computing for rural youth? Imagine a student in a rural town who loves art but has never had access to digital tools. or one fascinated by technology but with no local opportunities to explore AI or coding. In many rural communities, computing education is limited, and AI can feel distant, something designed elsewhere or something for someone else. But research shows that creative computing, where youth use technology for artistic expression, makes STEM learning more engaging, relevant, and empowering. That's why we created our algo. Creative computing combines art, design, and create computational thinking, allowing learners to explore artistic expression while developing problem solving and computational thinking skills. Instead of just learning to code, creative computing encourages youth to create digital art and interactive designs, making technology feel personal and accessible. Research highlights its potential to broaden STEM participation, especially for underrepresented youth. So what is our algo? Our algo is an AI-powered creative computing platform that helps users to co-create and code digital art while exploring AI's creative potential. And it is designed through a participatory process. It ensures young learners see their identities reflected in their work, fostering computational thinking and digital literacy. So the AI in our algo acts as a creative collaborator, helping youth generate ideas, receive real-time feedback, and explore computational thinking. Instead of replacing creativity, AI enhances it, supporting experimentation and iteration. The beta version of our algo is in progress, and we will start our pilot data collection next month. And we are working with educators and partners to help us bring creative computing to more youth. So I look forward to connecting with everyone through this event and to shape the future AI-driven learning together. Okay, I'm here. Thank you, Laura and Emma. It's my first time actually hear my own voice in the webinar while also talking about it. So it is kind of cool. So yeah, thank you for this opportunity to showcase our work. This is a really kind of pilot work we're running, and maybe I can take question for anyone who is curious about creative computing. But I think the interface you are seeing here, it's like you have this text-based which generates the art on the right window, and the bottom part is the chatbot, which you can, and we use the ChatGPT API, but we narrowed it down to a platform which called p5.js, which is already established and have been used widely, which is open source. So we limited OpenAI to search the API within p5.js to generate the code suggestions, ideas, project they can do. So the AI doesn't really go unlimited option. Or otherwise, if you don't set a boundary, it's gonna give you some, some answers that's out of the confidence zone you don't want them to say. Yeah, so a little bit to add on this. And I'm also want to calling out for people who are interested in the project, for any educators or researchers. If you're interested in this kind of work, or if you are working on something like this, and I will be very happy to connect with you all. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to know, it says AI powered. What does that mean?
So we are still trying to find out a better term for this powered, because, like I said, this is the synergy of multiple API in one spot. So a little bit for people who don't know what the API is, it's thinking like the script for your brand. So now ChatGPT, you can buy their API, so you will never access the brand because that is kind of closed based by the company, right? So but what you can do is you can purchase the API and modify it potentially, and giving some prompt. We do, like we say, prompt engineering. So you can put some prompts to limit what the API can search and cannot search. So that's the way how we kind of build this platform. And like I said, we limited within for the P5.js data pool. So which is an other kind of API. So it's like AI powered means, like sort of kind of the back end of linking all the multiple database and library all together. So, we keep pushing this turn about, I like the slide you have earlier with the 3 ways of interacting, creating, like AI, because make me feel like, oh, what is this do? I feel like it's interacting at the same time creating. So I'm a learning scientist. So the stance I'm standing for is how can we push our youth, students, teachers, make them to be a more like a like a designer role of AI instead of just users. So part of this platform does is to actually invite youth to co-design the platform with us, to better understand what they are thinking, and what will be a more better kind of design features we can provide to support their learning. So part of this pilot data collection I mentioned earlier in the recording is to recruit those youth to join our research team to also co-design this, we call participatory design process with us. Yeah, so that's how this term come from. But Emma, I'm glad you asked.
I love that. That's a question I ask a lot of our AI tools or ed tech vendors. I'll say, so what does AI powered mean? Or what is the large language model that you're building from? Because I think some of that transparency and understanding for us as users is so important as we're thinking about what that looks like. So often we think about with this explosion of AI, it's the Gen AI part of it that is allowing so many more opportunities for the types of tools and automations and interesting projects like this that we can really develop. It's what our students are doing too. I think a lot of times a great example is like with YouTube. We were watching videos on YouTube and we were, maybe posting some things on YouTube, but our students and others were really pushing the envelope about how is that a social media platform and how do I really engage this way and what do I do, and really helping us expand the possibilities of that. And so it's so exciting to hear about these types of projects that you are working on and that others here at NC State and in the UNC system are working on, that's providing some transparency into this process for us as users that I think is a really important piece of AI literacy. I wonder if folks have more questions, what would be the best way to connect, Joey? Email, or is there an avenue for that? What would you like?
Oh yeah, email would be great. And I believe I'm in Sarah. Sarah mentioned that group for the faculty. I believe that we have a Slack channel. So I'm happy to share my email here. Let me see if I can type.
I think
Oh,
that's
yeah,
in the chat. Is that the right email for you to reach you?
in the chat. Let me see. I don't think I did. I post anything here? Yeah, that should be good.
Okay, great. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining and sharing about the work that you're doing. Really appreciate it.
Mm.
Yes.
Thank you, guys.
So our last example is from Jared Stewart Ginsburg. He is an assistant teaching professor in the Department of Teacher Education and Learning Sciences, where he teaches courses in the special education program. So I think this, actually, this is our next to last. We have one more after this. So this one integrates a chat bot and is a way that Jared is using a tool also and then layering something else on top of it. So he built a classroom management bot that pulls from research on evidence-based classroom management practices. He built it on the PlayLab platform. You see their logo there, and trained it on a series of practitioner articles describing evidence-based practices in classroom management. So then users of this chatbot that he created can ask the bot questions related to classroom management and receive an evidence-informed, compassionate response that is built to build their resilience and self-efficacy. Jared is working on IRB approval so he can start formally evaluating it. He has showcased it to some of his students, and there is a link, thank you, Emma, that Emma put in the chat, where you can go try it out yourself. I tried it out and thought it was really interesting, and definitely one of those examples of using AI to solve a problem. Really cool. So our last example is from Dr. Carl Young, and he is an associate professor of English education and program coordinator for middle grades English language arts and social studies, and also MAT English language arts and MED English language arts. So I think what Dr. Young shared with us is a really good example of showing the journey from awareness to advocacy, because he kind of shared what his experience was and what motivated him to undertake this project. And it really, to me, flows well with that diagram that Emma shared with us earlier this afternoon. So the study grew out of what Carl called the media frenzy about AI, when claims about it were ranging from it was going to be the end of writing, the end of the English class, the end of the English degree, or maybe even the end of the world. He was working with a subcommittee of the National Council of Teachers of English and English Language Arts Teacher Education Commission on digital literacies in teacher education. And so one of the committee members put out a call for an edited collection, and that's pictured here. And it coincided with a conference that was happening in 2023, and that's where he got the idea for this research project. And he began connecting with other English educators to pitch the study and recruit collaborators. So he submitted a proposal for the book chapter, and that was accepted. And he came back home after the conference and reached out to some in-service teachers, pre-service teachers, and began the study that summer and completed it later in 2024. So the study examined perspectives of and experiences with using generative AI across 11 participants. So it was 4 English educators, 3 in-service high school teachers, and 4, the English educators were teacher educators in education prep programs, 3 in-service practicing high school teachers, and 4 pre-service English teachers. So after receiving all their responses, Dr. Young and Dr. Laura Jacobs used thematic coding to analyze the different responses. And the analysis resulted in these 4 findings, reflecting broadly the group's perspectives and experiences with generative AI so far. And also, its potential, but also its pitfalls. So generative AI as the mentor, colleague, coach, and support, as the capable, automated, adaptive laborer, as unpredictable, inconsistent, and at times unreliable and even dishonest. And then finally, as complicit in reproducing and possibly encouraging bias, inequity, and barriers. So the degree to which each of the people who participated experienced these 4 things varied, but they were consistent themes across the group. And Dr. Young has continued his research with this group and added 2 additional groups, and the findings have continued to hold true and also improve in quality and consistency. So generative AI is adapting and improving at a rapid rate is one of the things that they found, but there are still instances of the problems listed as 3 and 4 in this graphic, right? The unpredictability and inconsistency, and the bias as well. So the study itself includes examples of how various teachers are using generative AI. For anybody who's interested in looking at that in more detail, we have a link that we can share with you, and Dr. Young's contact information as well. So I think, right, that he went from the interest to experimenting to then moving towards advocacy and getting others involved, and then sharing ideas. And Emma, I loved how you talked about the fact that this is a cyclical process, right? When we try it and then we share and then we go back, and we're testing. So we saw that in several of the examples that our colleagues are doing research on what they have created. So they're testing and then going back and evaluating and sharing that with all of us.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's interesting because seeing that kind of this arc of how Dr. Young has engaged in this work is really kind of resemblant of the ways that I encourage folks to step into AI, is start having those conversations, talk with your colleagues, sort this out, build your awareness and interest, like I mentioned with that adoption model at the beginning of our webinar this afternoon, and then grow and see where it goes. I really think these findings, as you're describing here, that they're continuing to be very cautious and think about, is this the right fit? Does this work? Do I need to jump in and not think about all of these parameters and concerns that are very valid, especially if we don't have a clear policy or guidelines in order to help direct us? And so what I really admire and appreciate about Dr. Young is his thoughtfulness and his way of engaging other professionals and his colleagues to advocate and try to understand what this looks like. I want to wrap up our afternoon together here by calling out a quote from a former colleague of ours here at NC State as part of the Engage AI Institute, which is led by Dr. James Lester. It's a cross-collaborative program that's an NSF grant that we're in year 4 of 5 to really research and investigate AI. And so what Dr. Rose says here is, for us, as we're thinking about advocating, what does that mean? It's important for us to engage with our stakeholders and to be together in conversations around the future of AI. And I would really encourage, as we are seeing different executive orders or different guidance around what this is supposed to look like, that we really invest in the final part of this quote, that collective understanding and vision for how we can best imagine the classroom of the future. I want to be led and directed and have advocacy for those folks who are the educators. I'm not going to be driven by what the tech folks say or what the developers say, because I know what's good teaching and learning, and I know how to embed those teaching and learning practices in meaningful ways with technology. And so, really, what I encourage, and I hear Dr. Rowe encouraging as well, is be involved. Be in those conversations. Let's figure this out and make sure that we're doing things that are safe, responsible, and ethical, so that we are making sure that we are doing that for our own practice, but also doing that for what is best for those that we work with and for our students as well. And so I appreciate the opportunity to think about this critically with you this afternoon. If you're curious and want to think about how do you grow towards advocacy for AI once you have gotten to the point of adoption, just leave you with the leadership challenge here to set the example and enlist others to experiment and take some risks. Think about how you can strengthen others and then recognize and celebrate that. And I hope that you've had that sense of celebration and recognition this afternoon, as we really wanted to capstone this 4-part webinar series with those pieces that we could showcase from our colleagues here across NC State and beyond. Really amazing and interesting work that we are doing. You will hear me talk a lot about AI literacy and how do we grow and develop that ability to understand, evaluate, and use AI. I would also challenge us that we can champion something called AI fluency. And for each of us, that's going to be various levels of proficiency and understanding and experience that we might grow depending upon our role and how we might be using that AI piece. And so I'd really leave you with this notion of setting a professional goal for what are your next steps related to AI. And if you'd be willing to share your commitment on social media, we follow the hashtag AI with the FI. And so would love to be able to track that and learn what you might be working towards in your professional goal there as well. I will share that there are two more opportunities that are coming up as our webinar series is coming to a close. The first one being our higher education workshop that will be here at the Friday Institute on February 25th. And we're excited about how that is taking shape and the folks that we will have here together in conversation and in leadership. But then also, I would suggest that on March 28th this year, so just in about little less than 2 months, we have our National AI Literacy Day, and there will be plenty of opportunities from various organizations across the country who will be elevating that as a celebration, but also an opportunity for learning to engage with AI and to grow that AI literacy piece. We're about to make an announcement ourselves about an event that's happening that Friday. And so hope that you will stay tuned to learn more about what that looks like in the next week or so. And finally, I want to leave you all with a huge level of appreciation for you all who've been able to join us, but also for my partner in this series, Laura Fogel. Again, I will say, amazing collaborator. She is a great resource for you all here in the College of Ed, but also is wonderful at connecting and finding, as her librarian heart does, the resources and materials that are important to continue to learn and implement that both for staff and for faculty. So thank you
Thank,
so much. That's our material for today. It looks like we've got a question from Mark Light in the chat about joining FLC. It looks like the deadline may have closed last week on that Google form. Mark, I will send you Sarah Egan Warren's email address so you can reach out to her directly and be able to inquire about that. She's great at responding and connecting folks. So I will make sure to follow up with that. Awesome. Great.
thanks everybody for being with us. And so much, as Emma said, we hope that you'll consider joining us on February 25th for the in-person workshop to continue this conversation, and tease that March date as well. Excited about opportunities we have to continue working on that. It looks like Sarah Egan Warren said, thanks for letting us know about the expiration, still taking new members. So if you're able to fill out the form still, Mark, it looks like they are still taking new members and they're going to work on that deadline issue.
Awesome. Great. Thanks so much, folks.
Thanks,
Appreciate it.
everybody. Have a great weekend.